Faith is not a choice. I didn't just wake up one day and choose not to believe in God anymore. For a long time, I desperately wanted to believe in God, but my paradigm had shifted so drastically that I couldn't will myself to.
So you could be the wise man in the story, so that when the rains come down and the floods come up, you don't have to run to your closet and vacuum it out in front of like 40,000 Instagram followers.
The divine, the human divine, is being just totally snuffed out. That's extremely alarming.
And now it's time to consider the path of your feet, for crying out loud.
Today, we are considering the path of the feet of this gal. We've seen her stuff before. She's the gal that was existential anxiety cleaning her closet. And now she is taken her message from her closet into her car, probably in a parking lot somewhere. And she feels that in her car, she needs to tell people why you can't just choose to believe in God anymore once you've left the faith.
Faith is not a choice. I didn't just wake up one day and choose not to believe in God anymore. For a long time, I desperately wanted to believe in God, but my paradigm had shifted so drastically that I couldn't will myself to. A lot of people who have experienced faith deconstruction will tell you it feels like something that happened to them. I would feel doubt or discomfort or dissonance, and I feel like it was a choice to allow myself to explore those things. Once I let myself, it was pretty quickly that the beliefs crumbled. I did that first for Mormonism, and then Jesus, and then a traditional idea of God. Even though leaving faith is very devastating, it is definitely worth it to no longer have to spend so much time and energy trying to make sense of something that just simply, to my brain, doesn't make sense. Telling me to find Jesus again or just believe in God again is really futile, because even if I wanted to, I don't think I could. I also just don't want to.
Initial knee-jerk reaction. What do you think?
Oh man, there's a lot going on there. The Sid the Sloth class has distracted me a little bit from that.
Okay, that's all right.
That's no, like she's obviously very pretty, but like it's just the glasses themselves like were really wide set, and that kind of threw me off.
I did notice the frames. They were big frames. Yeah.
They're big frames.
Couple of hula hoops sitting on her nose. Yeah.
Yeah, that's relevant. I mean, in the comments, a lot of people like the glasses. You do you. That's fine.
Yeah, glasses be glasses.
I think she framed it in a very inflammatory way. She buried the lead really well, because like at the end of the day, she's saying, I don't know, I decided not to believe anymore, and then I didn't want to. Like she's like, saying that faith isn't a choice was just a really silly thing to say, because she just deconstructed her own statement for like 2 minutes there. Right. It's like, oh, faith's not a choice, but I decided to explore other things other than faith, and then I didn't want to do faith anymore. That's exactly what happened.
So you chose to not pursue it anymore.
Right, yeah, like that's exactly what she was saying. So I was like, I think you don't understand the words you're using, like you keep using this word like not a choice. I couldn't will myself to believe in God. I just, after I chose not to believe in him, I couldn't believe in him. It's like, yeah, you chose not to do that. And the comments she was rebutting about people saying, just believe in Jesus again and come back, or just come back to church. Like those comments on that side are obviously not going to work for people like her, because she has made the decision not to believe anymore, she has made the decision to explore other explanations for how the universe came to be, or explore other, explanations for, the root of Christianity and the power that's in it, that's in Jesus Christ. She's just not interested in that. So it's a desire, and she can't change her desire without like actually putting effort into it. And she doesn't want to put effort into it, by her own words. So I think that for her, it's not a choice because she chose for it to not be a choice, if that makes sense.
Wow. That's pretty deep right there.
Yeah.
It's funny. I think of the word, let me see right here. She said something along the lines of faith deconstruction is something that happened to me. And I love that word deconstruction. And I feel like a lot of people overuse that word, but it was a term that was created in the 70s. And I understand it means like a way to analyze sentences and break them apart and figure out what they're actually trying to get at, and it's a tool to help with critical thinking. However, the guy who created that word himself actually said that a lot of people don't understand what this word actually means, and they don't use it the right way. And you look at the word and it makes sense, because you look at the word like de, which means like to undo something, and then construction, which means to build something up. And so I think the word that better suits, it's probably a less PC word, but the word that is better suited to a lot of what I see from Instagram, these influencers that go out there and wail about the mosquito bites of life, is destruction. They destroy their faith. They aren't deconstructing it. They are exploding it. They are demolishing their faith. In the same way that you can destroy your health, or you can destroy any degree of fitness just by choosing to not engage in a fit and healthy lifestyle. So if you stop engaging with a spiritually healthy lifestyle and pursue a spiritually ill lifestyle that is leaving your spirit malnourished, your muscles are going to atrophy. Your spiritual muscles, they're going to atrophy. You're going to call it deconstruction. You're going to say, well, actually, this was an intellectual decision that I made. I put on my librarian glasses so that you know how intellectual I am about this, where I took it piece by piece and realized, after analyzing everything, that it was not something for me. Whereas I think the reality looks a little bit less like that and a little bit more like someone who's like, I'm not really feeling going to the gym today. I'm not going to do that. Yeah. I'm not feeling it. I'm going to stay home. It's a little bit easier. It's a little bit nicer. It feels a little bit more comfortable to do this. So I'm going to do that. The more difficult path in life is always going to be difficult, but there's always going to be a choice whether or not to follow that path and to develop the virtues, or to say, no, I'm just going to call it today.
Yeah, I'm not buying her whole, like, I can't will myself to do anything. Well, maybe to a certain degree, because people just, a lot of people just don't have willpower. But I feel like it all is all rooted in desire. Like, if you don't want to go to church, then you more often than not find an excuse to not go to church. Your mind will work towards that goal and get you what you want. Everyone's going to find what they want in the end. Everyone's going to get what they want eventually, because that's what their brain is always working toward, is like, what do I actually want, and moving in that direction. So I feel like before you deconstruct anything, you should just sit down and ask yourself that question, like, what do I actually want?
Right.
What do I want? And then, like, if you don't want to go to church, then explore that instead of exploring all the things to justify your reason to not go to church.
Yeah.
I think she's approaching it from, the bottom up instead of the top down, and it's going to be kind of messy and leave her feeling trapped in her disbelief, is the way she put it. So,
right.
I don't know. It doesn't seem like a fun place to be.
Well, to me, I mean, it's something that, crazy as it sounds, it makes a little bit of sense, where it's like, wait a second, I destroyed my entire faith system, the way that my operating system, if you will. I've completely demolished that, razed it to the ground, and now for some reason I can't just simply choose to re-inhabit that. It's like, well, yeah, it's nothing but rubble at this point, because the system and shelter that you had built, you have destroyed it. You were like, I've deconstructed it. Yeah, you destroyed it. It's gone. It's no longer there. You can't just go back on there and in the rubble and say, all right, well, let's just pretend like this is a house that could keep me safe from the elements and all that. It's something that you actually have to put intentional work back into. Like, if you're going to be a faithful person, then you're going to have to develop the habits of a faithful person, which is going to take intentional work and effort, and a lot of it. And it's going to take time, because you're going to have to rebuild that brick by brick. It reminds me of a scene from Pinocchio. It's where all the boys, they're on Pleasure Island, and they're in this model home. And Lampwick, he grabs a brick, he looks over to Pinocchio, and he's like, hey, see that stained glass window over there? And he just chucks it right at that stained glass window, shatters it to pieces. How long do you think it took to build that stained glass window?
Oh, stained glass is tough, There's a lot that goes into it. So,
yeah,
a long time.
Probably quite a bit of time probably went into that stained glass window. And how long did it take to destroy that stained glass window?
Oh, almost instantly.
Couple of seconds.
Just one brick away. Yep.
Push. And so it's really, really simple to destroy your faith. There are so many arguments out there to say, all right, well, you can go and get sucked into however many anti-algorithms that you want, and they will all tell you like, hey, follow me, woo, and we can all destroy our faith together. But the problem is, it leads back to the existential anxiety closet cleaning, right? As she's told us, it leads to a house that is no longer inhabitable. It leads to an operating system that glitches out. It doesn't suit you anymore. And so you have to figure out something else. And to be able to re-inhabit your belief system means an active, conscientious effort to rebuild your faith. And that is what the youth programs were designed to do. Is they, from primary upwards, were designed to brick by brick carefully lay a foundation, and not just in the church. This is home-centered we're talking about. Your family should be helping you build that foundation, so build your connection to the rock, and then build a house on top of that. And so you can be the wise man in the story, so that when the rains come down and the floods come up, that you don't have to run to your closet and vacuum it out in front of like 40,000 Instagram followers, okay? This is...
Yeah, well, I think... to your point, you're using Pinocchio is rather clever because they destroyed the stained glass window and it was fun doing it. They had fun doing it.
It was a good time.
And in certain elements, destroying your faith can be temporarily fun and satisfying, right?
Yeah,
that's the whole danger in it. Like that's why people destroy their faith so quickly, is because they go out and they just rebel against their own moral code for a while, and it's a lot of fun, right? Like they enjoy that, but the what they don't realize is that the longer they stay on Pleasure Island, the bigger the workload it is to actually build up their faith system again. Like that goes so quick.
It does. Well, and the scary part about Pleasure Island is that it took something from the boys, right? It stripped them of their humanity. They all turned into animals, so they were no longer humans by the end of their time at Pleasure Island. The longer you stay on Pleasure Island, the more of your humanity will be stripped from you. And that's exactly what this girl has just told us her process was. She was like, first it was from Mormonism, then from Jesus, then from God entirely. And so it's like, okay, so you no longer feel like a connection or a duty to love God and love your neighbor. You no longer feel like you are your brother's keeper. It's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
You're losing your humanity in this process, which is something to consider.
The human divine is being just totally snuffed out, and that's extremely alarming. So it's kind of sad to see, for sure. Like, and I believe, looking at her podcast, that she's kind of going into reconstruction and of moving towards that phase where she's starting to build things up again into a new direction, which is great. Glad that she's finally doing that, but she made her life really hard by tossing everything out the window so quickly,
Right. So like when you become the donkey, right? when you play on Pleasure Island for too long, you stop viewing people as people, and you start viewing them as clever animals who play clever games for money and power,
Yep.
And so that's the common trope you hear from all of these people, is that the church is all just based on money and control and power. That's all it is. It's just power, money, and control. Those three triple cherries that then dominate every system, and then they take that out to the workplace. They then start complaining about the culture at large through the lens of those three different systems.
All at the same time becoming a slave to the vices that they pick up at Pleasure Island, right? Like they're really just like enslaved by the choices that you make when you toss out when you knock down Chesterton's fence and just roll out into the prairie, just like, oh yeah, now I have all these cool things that I identify with that are contrary to the will of God, and they're really hard to give up because they're really fun and pleasurable,
Right.
So yeah, there's multi-layers there.
So from Gordon B. Hinckley, he said, your faith is like a muscle. It requires constant care and exercise. Fail to use it and it atrophies, and so going back to her original argument about faith, it's like what she's saying right now is accurate. Her muscles have atrophied at that point, So it's like saying to someone who has just been on the couch for like 2 or 3 years, like, hey, let's go run a race. Let's go run a marathon. It's not going to happen. No, can't do that. It's like, well, you're right. You have to train yourself back into it. You're going to have to get yourself back into shape. in order to do that. So, what's the takeaway? For the average member sitting in their house in the age of home-centered church, what is the takeaway for them from this gal's video?
You know, if you have questions about your faith and your religion, those are totally fine. You know, it's totally fine to to question, like, what am I doing here exactly, and where do I fit in? Like, those are natural and should be asked at some point in your life. Don't pick up the brick and throw it through the stained glass window. Like, just don't do that.
Right.
Right. Actually lean on the people around you and your community and let them support you as you work through those questions, rather than toss everything out the window and start sharing, anti-religious content on the internet.
Right.
That's what I would recommend. Just kind of take it slow a little bit.
Well, and the other thing to point out is this is a young gal, and you have to be wary of that. It's like, life is hard, and it's going to throw a lot of hard curveballs your way, and you have to be ready for that. And the gospel provides you a shelter connected to the rock that will keep you safe and secure throughout the storms of life. And you shouldn't just throw that out, or take it lightly, or think like, hey, I don't understand X, Y, or Z, so let's just destroy the entire connection that I have to this rock, where you're completely disconnected from like religion, and disconnected from help, and disconnected from a support system that could help you, mold you, shape you, and strengthen you during your darkest moments. So, in the age of home-centered church, be conscientious about your building, your construction of your house to the rock, and be careful that you don't mistake deconstruction and analyzing religion. That you don't mistake that for that analysis for destruction and demolition. Because once you destroy that worldview, it becomes really hard to re-inhabit the old operating system. Just like that stained glass window. Like, once you shatter it, it's going to take a lot of work to rebuild it. And so, if you're in the age of home-centered church, I would say to my kids, like, hey, be very, very careful. Like, this is something that's precious, and you should treasure it and guard it. And you might not understand it, and it might not make sense, and you might want to throw a brick through it sometimes. But hang in there, and you're going to understand. Get a little bit more miles under your feet, and you'll understand why it's there.